Alright everyone, it's official, Diamond is Unbreakable is my new favorite part of JoJo's bizarre adventure. While it didn't have the same world-ending stakes parts 1, 2, and 3 had, I didn't find my enjoyment diminished even in the slightest. In fact, I'd even argue that the approach Diamond is Unbreakable took in telling its story of this small town's troubles served only to enhance the drama and sense of tension throughout for me, ending on a touching moment that I sincerely never saw coming, and when it did happen, I didn't realize how nostalgic this journey was for me. In other words, this story, while significantly smaller in scope compared to the 3 that came before it, in many ways felt much more potent as a result. And today I want to explore what it was that worked for me about the story, break down some of my favorite stand battles, and to finally hunt down and stop the dangerous man that wants to live a quiet life. I'm totally not Mark, and this is my review for the unmistakable, unshakable Diamond is Unbreakable. So earlier this week, I was perusing the comment section of my videos. You know, it's something that I've gotten into the groove of doing. I enjoy reading through everyone's comprehensive thoughts on the material I spend an entire week slaving over. I don't know why I even try anymore. I'm, of course, kidding.
No, you're not.
I hate it when people get names wrong too, so I'll try harder in the future to get these names correct. So, after Joeseph used Shining Diamond on Deadly Queen— No! Alright, okay, so, where were we? Oh yeah, last week Mr. Hansi, after his fight with Star Platinum and Echoes, went not so well. He decided to make his way to Cinderella's, where he killed everyone who was there, but not before stealing a face and vanishing into the crowd, assuming a brand new identity. In my opinion, this was a terrific idea on behalf of Araki, and wouldn't you believe it, this half has even more great ideas. Speaking of which, because the English localization doesn't cover the majority of this second half of the story, I will now be watching the anime's adaptation as a substitute, so let's begin. Episodes 25 and 26. Following this unfortunate loss of contact with the now newly disguised Kira, Jotaro and the gang decide to check the first place anyone would for any indication of where he might go, or to at the very least learn more about him specifically. His home. I don't really have any strong feelings one way or the other about the Kira father character going by the name of Yoshihiro. I think his stand power and the encounters that spawn forth from it, including the battle in the house, were creative and engaging as an audience member, but he also feels like a much more shallow implementation of a mechanic within the story to keep Kira's involvement to a minimum until its climax time, with him effectively being the main culprit responsible for all of the obstacles that orientate themselves before our heroes on their quest for Kira's newly acquired identity. And look, I'll hold my hand up, I recognize that this is something that this story requires. If the heroes were to find Kira almost immediately, that's firstly anticlimactic to the max, and it's not interesting at all. So naturally there needs to be some mechanism to delay the discovery of Kira somehow. However, I just found this to be slightly on the contrived side of things, what with him flying around town in a photograph attached to a bird, shooting arrows left and right like some sort of flat-balled Cupid. And this wouldn't bother me at all if not for another part of the story that makes itself known soon after, but I'll get to that in just a second. Once Jotaro and Josuke enter a room in Kira's old house looking for clues, they notice a camera suddenly snap their picture, and somewhat creepily, it pictures an old man in the corner of the image. They recognize this man from photographs dotted throughout the house as Yoshihiro, Kira's father figure, who despite being deceased is still alive within the photographs, and with him comes abilities that restrict the motion of those within the frame of the picture taken. However, in a rather quick fashion, Jotaro comes up with a clever solution, and thus saves the day in this episode. This is a great example of what I think this part does better than all the others. While part 3 and part 2 had clever uses of the respective power sets and systems, Diamond is Unbreakable's use of the powers that occupy the pages are phenomenal, particularly with Josuke that I touched on before, but I will be definitely touching on again later. Once his plan is foiled, Yoshihiro flies off with the bow and arrow in Kira's home and hitches a ride on a bird. Sounds ridiculous, and it is! He'll be causing all sorts of trouble from here on in, as he travels across the town looking for people to shoot and activate their stand for to protect his son. But strangely, he seems to be the one that's guided by the arrow that seems to have its own autonomy and targets in mind. And its first target? This kid that's obsessed with rock, paper, scissors apparently. If nothing else, this encounter provides Rohan, a character I really enjoy, another opportunity to shine in the spot, to demonstrate his cool powers and to overcome the forces of this weird vortex stand sucking power of the rock, paper, scissors kid. Episodes 27, 28, 29, and 30. Within this grouping of 4 episodes, we have 2 standalone and 2 that act as a 2-parter. So let's tackle these in order. Flying around the town like the G from the Goosebumps intro, Yoshihiro sets his sights on this lone individual walking down a country road. Strangely, however, this arrow only dings off of his cheek. Seems to be made of some material far more durable than he anticipated, and, well, he's an alien. And you'd think this would be a massive deal that would have massive ramifications for the entire series, but it doesn't really. It's an alien, and you know, people care for like an episode or 2, but he really doesn't come up later. Oh my god. And this alien outs himself as an alien almost immediately once he runs into Josuke and Okuyatsu randomly. As a side note, I really enjoy Okuyatsu and Josuke as a team. Their friendship feels believable, and what's more is that we've been there since its beginning. There's plenty of humor extracted from this encounter too, but once Josuke discovers that the being can transform into whatever he likes, he decides to have him turn into a die so that he can cheat in a gambling game with Rohan, which he does, and he does win. It's a pretty fun episode. However, one aspect I appreciated about these episodes from the second half is their dedication to continuity. Rohan is still salty about what has just transpired with the gambling contest between himself and Josuke, and this helps these standalone episodes feel much more connected than they otherwise would have in first half of this season. The next episode and 2-parter feels like a car chase film, if that makes any sense, with a creative JoJo twist. After hopping on a bus with JoJo, Rohan notices a small room he thinks something sinister could be happening within a tunnel. After requesting for JoJo to help him investigate, which he declines to do so by the way, Rohan investigates on his own, discovering a stand that has the ability to suck the nutrients out of individual bodies, and interestingly has a massive range and the ability to travel at high speeds. Josuke does eventually come just in time to help save Rohan, and thus the chase begins between the rogue enemy stand and Josuke. This is some of my favorite stuff from the character, by the way. While I harped on about this last week quite a lot, I absolutely adore the mechanic of Josuke's stand and how versatile it is in injecting excitement and creativity in every conceivable scenario. I mean, during this chase scene, in order to not slow down when approaching civilians at a crosswalk, he destroys his bike, leaps through the air with the parts flying through the air, and then reassembles the motorbike before landing again without any loss of speed. Like, that's such a cool, visually interesting thing and a fun idea that makes use of his power. This chase is by far the highlight of this 2-part episode, and Josuke eventually locates where the stand user was staying. After some investigation and quick thinking on behalf of Koichi, that points Josuke to the room of the hospital that he finds this stand user. Apparently he's been sucking nutrients to try to heal himself, and in retaliation for everything that he's put Josuke through, Josuke heals him and beats the hell out of him, returning him to his once debilitated state. It's quite funny. Okay, so let's talk about Kira. Interestingly, instead of the first half of the story, which heavily focused on and concerned itself with the slice of life character interactions and exploration into the town of Morio, this second half has the constant presence of Kira informing pretty much every episode. And the audience once again are made aware of Kira's new persona, giving us that extra layer of dramatic irony the main cast aren't aware of yet, as we follow Kira as he explores his new world and family for the first time. And in an ironic twist of fate, the once stale relationship on the verge of collapse Kira's host once had now seems to be a much better fit for him as a personality. With his new wife's romantic interest rekindled and at a new all-time high, and their financial troubles seemingly on the mend, thanks exclusively to Kira's choices as an individual, the scenes that he participates in early on are clearly there to give him something to struggle against or bounce off of, while the others are trying to find him and work their way towards the finale. In other words, the hero team and the evil squad are both sort of in this waiting phase before they reach the climax of this story. The first of these mini adventures with the new Kira concerns a particular cat that his wife accidentally kills and he buries in the back garden. The cat, once possessing a stand, now has sprouted as a flower, a cat flower if you will. This also explains all of the suggestions I received to name my bonsai Stray Cat. This manifestation of a cat flower stand user that can shoot high-speed air bubbles that can cause serious damage are quickly taken care of by Kira by way of hiding it from light in his attic. Now, this brings me to the last and final aspect of this story that I otherwise didn't really buy into. and that's their son, Hayato Kawajiri. You see, while Kira was pondering to himself concerning his current state of affairs and worries out loud while practicing the handwriting of his new host, the kid didn't just hear him, but he was filming him. And this isn't the only time this kid sets up spy equipment either. Now, this criticism I have might very well be the result of my growing up in an otherwise rural part of the world, or it might be the fact that Araki thought the world would be much more technologically advanced by the turn of the millennium, but for a kid to have all of this genuinely impressive spy equipment seems really far-fetched to me. And not just that, the fact that this kid has surveillance over his father so effectively is essentially the only reason Kira gets found out at all in the end. Every subsequent clue or connected dot the gang unraveled during their investigation only manifests in certainty because of the child's suspicions of his father that came from these hidden camera setups. Alright, okay, that's everything I didn't like, so let's talk about something what I did like. Episodes 31, 32, 33, and 34. So, Yoshihiro, Kira's father, by random happenstance, notices and identifies his son Kira by looking at his fingernails. Why? Okay, so the hook of these episodes is that they are all taking place on essentially the same day, July 15th, 1999. Rohan takes a picture at the exact same time Hayato is investigating his father, giving him means with which to learn his name because his school bag has his surname on it. And Josuke and Okuyatsu defeat another stand user in the transmission tower thanks to Mr. Alien Man.
Yippee-kayak, other buckets!
Transmission Tower Man reveals that Koichi has been eliminated, and in order to track down the dude that took out Koichi, Josuke implies the help of someone he knows that has a great sense of smell and wide-range stand. This guy, remember him? I do! And he finds him. The gentleman that they were searching down had stands that, in all honesty, were not at all anything that I would have expected. He can apparently suck people into pieces of paper if they are scared, and he's already got Koichi, so now he's sucking in Josuke. I love that Josuke hangs onto something from the outside world, and despite being sucked into the, origami dimension, using his crazy diamond, he manages to restore what he was holding, and thus momentarily drags himself out. While this didn't work, I once again thought it was a super cool idea to combine these two powers and what it might manifest as. Thankfully, however, for Josuke and Koichi for that matter, they are released after the guy that smells good saves them in a really creative way. The following episode, episode 34, kinda bugs me, but once again made Rohan my favorite character from this part. Alright, so he sort of gets this back gremlin stand stuck onto him. And okay, I know, it's creepy and all that stuff, but what bugged me about it wasn't the stand or anything like that. It was the fact that when he reached out to Koichi for help, Koichi didn't believe him. I mean, come on, man! You're now living in a world with stand magic. An evil stand that's on its back that you aren't allowed to see isn't the weirdest thing that's happened even this week for you. You have a weird bug man that can play with sound and turn up gravity, and he can read your face like a book. During this section, there's some really funny moments watching Rohan navigate the world without showing someone his back, which again is something this season of JoJo did a lot with, creating these what-if scenarios that otherwise wouldn't or couldn't have come up in any other show or story. Thankfully, Koichi does turn up to save the day in the end because he wasn't sure if he was lying or not. But the real star of this show is once again Rohan, who, unbeknownst to the creature on his back, positions him to look down at the alley that you aren't supposed to look down, ultimately dragging him straight to hell. And so we're heading into the end game now, as we follow Kira stalk some kids home and ultimately murder them. But interestingly, the entire act was videotaped by Hayato, who, despite being from a small town in 1999 Japan, has more spy tech than you can swing a cat at. This now puts Kira into a dangerous position, one he needs to rectify soon. Disclaimer, I am not going to cover the weird bath scene because I don't feel like outlining the narrative idiosyncrasies of a weird bath scene.
Why don't you have a seat?
Episode 35 and 36, another one bites the dust. This is a really interesting and fun prelude to the finale that incorporates aspects from films like Groundhog Day, but with a distinct JoJo twist. And despite it being the culmination of several events that I thought felt a little contrived, this still managed to be a really fun time that I could easily get behind, all the while developing for Kira a brand new move to help him deal with his enemies. Oh yeah, and this happened. Something I really enjoy about Araki's writing of Kira is how vulnerable he feels. In making the decision to give the audience the perspective of Kira early on, it helps to put us into his shoes, not to empathize with him necessarily, but to instead feel the strains and pressures he feels as people in his life skirt around and press the lines of truth in his character, causing him great anxiety, fearing his identity being exposed. There's a clearly observed, almost pathetic and desperate nature to Kira's character, particularly after his new son discovers the truth about him and outs it to him, which I found in later encounters helps to add a separate perspective in battles to keep an eye on. No longer are we looking at villains that always seem to be in control. Kira's character's entertainment factor largely comes from how he reacts to bad news and, like the heroes, struggles to make sense of situations, trying to solve problems that present themselves in real time. With Jotaro and Josuke hot on his tail, in this state of terror and anxiety over being found out, his father tries to calm him down, when suddenly, the same arrow that sought out all of those other stand users forces itself from the photograph and into Kira's body, before cutting to black. From the depths of this seemingly irreversibly impossible to escape from scenario came the following day. Now completely calm and brandishing a brand new hairstyle stands Kira. And his son, now alive? What the hell is happening? This can't be a flashback. His hair's completely different. The boy seems driven to do something about his situation too, so he seems to know what's going on. Kira even meets him on his walk to school and fills him in on more information before leaving him and allowing Rohan to intercept the child.
岸辺露伴は殺された。成長したキラに殺された。
Suddenly and without indication, Killer Queen jumps into the eye of Rohan and ultimately leads to his explosion, causing Hayato to relive that morning 1 hour in the past. Initially confusing, the mechanics of this new power of Kira's become more and more clear as time goes on. While Hayato has experienced and recalls everything that just happened and therefore will happen, Kira and everyone else are left unaware of what exactly transpired. Though from Hayato's reaction, Kira is aware that this isn't the first time he's relived this go-around, because he himself is aware of his own powers. And so now we understand why Kira felt safe. Apparently this new technique called Bites the Dust effectively puts a curse on Hayato. If he reveals any information to anybody about the identity of Kira, then he will blow up those individuals immediately and rewind time back 1 hour. With the most screwed up part being, even if Hayato avoids these people he blew up, they still blow up at the exact same time they originally revealed that information to them. It's ridiculously screwed up, and this hour replays a number of times, with one instance even leading to a desperate encounter with everyone of the JoJo gang, trying to understand Hayato while he desperately tries to prevent their deaths. He doesn't succeed in that endeavor. So narratively, Araki has himself right now in a corner, so to speak. So let's see how he escapes this seemingly inescapable scenario. Using his knowledge of how the day will progress and what Kira is likely to do, Hayato puts all of his knowledge to use and does everything to stack the deck in his favor. Forcing Kira to meet him outside on a corner, he makes use of the stand cat plant that was in the attic to land a considerable attack on Kira when he wasn't expecting it. However, ever the one in control, Kira once again takes charge of the situation. But thankfully, that wasn't the only ace up Hayato's sleeve. As Kira monologues about various dangerous, delicate details, he does so unaware that he's being positioned in this conflict such that a certain someone would show up right behind him at just the right time. Josuke. Hayato found a way of getting Kira to out himself without triggering Bites the Dust. An awesome solution to this problem that saves everyone, including Rohan, while also adhering to the mechanics of the world. It was a terrific piece of writing and I really loved it. Episodes 37, 38, and 39. Crazy Diamond is Unbreakable and the finale. Now facing a critical set of circumstances and a growing laundry list of people that understand who he is and what he's done, Okuyasu and Josuke ready themselves for battle against the big bad of this town and this arc. The initial flurry to this battle is interesting, and it's really the first time that Josuke and Kira have fought, which leads Kira to remark that his stand, Josuke's, is the perfect complement to his own. I'm just gonna put it out there, I said that before I even saw this part. Stakes dramatically rising once again in an interesting turn of events and role reversal. Okuyasu now in the same situation Koichi was in during his and Josuke's very first fight, where Josuke now really wants to go and heal his friend, but someone is in his way. With his body now primed to explode, Okuyasu seems to be a lost cause, leaving Josuke only one choice: to heal him and sacrifice himself in the process. Yeah, okay, that was a much smarter idea. Because Hayato triggered the bomb, Josuke was free to restore both of them to perfect condition. However, even with the restored body, it looks as though, much like Josuke's grandpa, he was too late to save Okuyasu. Having been the character he spent the most screen time with by far, I really buy Josuke's reaction and grief over Okuyasu's possible death. And with that, it's time for the big showdown. It's Josuke versus Kira. Possessing everything I liked about the prior finale from seasons 1 to 3, only without the world on the line, it proved that what makes these fights great aren't the stakes but the creative writing used within them, exemplifying perfectly through another genius implementation of Josuke's stand power. Sending a detonation bubble while combining the use of this Killer Queen and Stray Cat, it's revealed that the only reason that Kira knows where they are in the house is by way of Kira's father Yoshihiro ratting their positions out while in their pocket. JoJo smokes him out and then feeds Kira the incorrect information to blow up his own father, before hitting him with another big blow from a glass projectile used to hit his mark by way of restoring it to its original location. It's a brilliant idea. Josuke finding ways of making his healing properties of Crazy Diamond work offensively is always interesting and by far my favorite part of this entire story. And what follows this brief window of opportunity is a decimation on behalf of Josuke to Kira. Josuke is far too fast, and just as he's about to win, the cat plan blocks his attack, and it seems it's time for a Kira counterattack. Moments from making contact with Josuke, Okuyatsu uses his stand to manipulate the distance between him and the bubble projectile to Josuke. Killer Queen's two best techniques, the heart attack drone and the bubble bombs, are therefore diffused by the team of Josuke and Okuyatsu's combined abilities. Now surrounded by the entire team, the focal point of attention with no escape in sight, he hears an ambulance and thinks to use Bites the Dust to rewind time. This took me completely by surprise, and I mean completely by surprise. In what I and Kira thought was a successful use of Bites the Dust with Killer Queen, he instead finds himself here in this alley with Remy. Through this interaction, we learn the true and pathetic fate that actually befell Kira in his final moments. Beaten to a pulp by everyone and eventually crushed to death by an ambulance on accident. The nature of this ending is poetic and honestly carried out by the very right person. The first person Kira ever killed. Now, after having fulfilled what she stayed in the living world for, to bring balance back to the once troubled town of Morio, after having cast this monster into the abyss of hell he will burn in for eternity, she and her dog can finally rest in peace. And that's pretty much Diamond is Unbreakable. I thoroughly enjoyed this very different and in a way stripped down version of the JoJo formula. Araki in this proved to me that he doesn't need to have all the bells and whistles of a big finale many shonen would normally enjoy. Instead, he can make something feel fittingly special and unique just by being the creative mangaka he has proven himself to be. What's more is the ending to this arc specifically took me by surprise, with Jotaro, Josuke, and Joeseph sharing a nice and humorous moment before panning across a montage of all the folks we've gotten to know in Moria. This is a town we've spent a considerable amount of time exploring and getting to know, and watching everyone go about their day-to-day lives really felt oddly nostalgic, knowing that this is the end of our journey and perhaps the last time we'll ever see any of them. Next week, I tackle what will be the final JoJo part in this series up until another English localization pops up. Next week, I start my review on JoJo's bizarre adventure, Golden Wind, and I have a feeling it's gonna be...
She's a killer queen, gunpowder jealousy, dynamite with a laser beam, guaranteed to blow your mind. Ooh, recommend an enterprise, insatiable and appetite.